Hello and welcome to the ABCs of ADUs, Housing for a Changing Chicago. I'm Janae Wheeler and I'll be your host today. You might already be familiar with the terms in-law suite, backyard bungalow, guest house, or coach house. These are all common names used for additional dwelling units, or ADUs. Maybe you've been hearing more about these housing options lately, especially since the Chicago City Council recently passed a new ordinance to allow new ADUs in 5 pilot areas across the city. In this webinar, we want to paint a clear picture of what ADUs are. We'll talk about the benefits of these kinds of flexible housing options and what they offer to individuals and to the city of Chicago. We'll also explain why AARP's Livable Communities Initiative supports ADUs. We'll take a look at different types of ADUs and important considerations if you're interested in building one. Of course, we'll review Chicago's ADU rules and regulations and point you to some resources that can help you get started. But first, I'd like to get started with a message from Alderman Andre Vasquez from Chicago's 40th Ward and Daniel LaSpada representing the 1st Ward. They share their insight about the new ADU ordinance in this video.
Thank you for joining us to learn more about the Additional Dwelling Unit, or ADU ordinance. Following decades of policy decisions that limited their construction, this ordinance amended the city's municipal code to lawfully permit ADUs, ensuring more equitable access to housing options across Chicago's communities, providing financial stability for homeowners, and providing a path for existing ADUs to become code compliant. It promotes converting attics, basements, and coach houses, like the one I live in, to moderate cost housing. The ordinance establishes ADU areas in 5 zones spread across the different wards in Chicago. I represent Ward 40, which is in the Northwest Zone. I supported this ordinance because it expands housing access to thousands of residents across Chicago by what we call gentle density. What do we mean by gentle density? ADUs are not to be visible through significant exterior changes to the principal residential building, so we can maintain the character of our neighborhoods while still increasing housing options. Basement and attic apartments and coach houses are long-standing parts of Chicago's family housing stock, so ADUs are a natural way to add more housing units without dramatically changing the character of a neighborhood. One of the most exciting aspects of the new ordinance is that some of these residential units will be mandated affordable. By increasing affordable housing opportunities for renters, while also helping property owners deal with the financial demands of their properties, these ADUs will be a major step forward in our ongoing work to support our most vulnerable residents and our business community. Legalizing ADUs can have a real and positive impact on homeowners needing extra income to cover rising property taxes or adapting to age in place, while increasing residential options almost invisibly. Through this program, we will begin to see how ADUs will develop in different communities, how best to support affordability and accessibility, and how we can make this a citywide option. Through evaluation of these zones, we will be able to gather critical information on the impact ADUs can have on the landscape of available housing in Chicago and in helping homeowners become more financially stable. Chicago currently has an unknown number of existing non-conforming coach houses and basement and attic apartments that are in varying states of compliance with city regulations. A new grant program will provide financial assistance to low and moderate income homeowners to bring ADUs into code compliance, as well as to provide additional funds if the work creates an accessible ADU. Many existing ADU units are only illegal due to outdated zoning rules. Providing a pathway to legalization helps preserve thousands of existing units for the families that already live there. I look forward to seeing how ADUs can bring more opportunities for housing options, including affordable ones, and business growth to my ward.
We are so excited for the potential of what ADUs bring to the whole of the city of Chicago, but particularly to the 1st Ward, where I have the privilege of representing as alderman. ADUs move us in a new direction, these accessory dwelling units. For the last 5 years or so, the story of the 1st Ward had been about a loss of density. seeing 2 and 3 flat housing demolished on all of our side streets was really resulting in a loss of density, but also a loss of affordability. ADUs, the ability to convert basement spaces, attic spaces into new apartments, to bring new coach houses into the city, does the opposite by creating gentle density, creating new housing without significantly altering our built environment. It's why I was so excited that so much of the first ward was included in one of the 5 regional pilot projects that the city was moving forward with. It's why I've been so excited to see dozens of our neighbors already complete applications wanting to bring ADUs to their buildings, but also why I'm excited for the grant program that's going to be coming online, helping low and moderate income Chicagoans who may not have access to the capital to create these units have a pathway towards these units. But the rent isn't just going to be governed by the market. If you're doing more than one, 50% of those units are going to be affordable. We are so excited again for what this brings for Chicago, for differently abled Chicagoans, but also for our housing market overall.
We're off to a good start with that message. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers who will share more information about Chicago's new ADU ordinance. Joining us are Rosanna Marquez, AARP's state president for Illinois and a member of the Executive Council, and Adam Ballard, the associate state director for advocacy and outreach, also at AARP Illinois. Hello to you both.
Hi, Janae. Good to be here.
Hello, Janae. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. We'll also hear from Chicago's Department of Housing. Their Director of Policy, Daniel K. Hertz, will be joining us just a little later in the program. I'd like to get our conversation going by asking Rosanna to start with the basics. So Rosanna, tell us, what exactly is an ADU?
In Chicago's ordinance, ADU stands for additional dwelling units, but it can also mean accessory dwelling units. You may hear me or others use either word interchangeably, but they mean the same thing.
All right, so if I'm hearing you right, in other places, ADU stands for accessory dwelling unit, but in Chicago, ADU stands for additional dwelling unit. Is that kind of like how Chicagoans have Paulina Street, but in other places we have Paulina Street?
Yep. Here in Chicago, we do things our own way, and ADUs are no exception to that rule. But regardless of the acronym, an ADU is a residential unit built on the same lot as an existing home. There are many ways to name them, including in-law suite, carriage house, or attic apartment, or basement apartment. A lot of Chicagoans call them coach houses too. You may not realize that ADUs can be a part of the home or a separate structure. As long as the structure provides completely separate living quarters, including a kitchen and a bathroom, it's an ADU. The illustration you're looking at shows some ways to make an ADU detached, attached on the side, an interior upper level or attic apartment, or a basement apartment, and a couple of options for a garage.
That certainly helps clear up what we mean when we say ADU. Adam, can you tell us a little about Chicago's ADU ordinance?
Absolutely. The Additional Dwelling Units Ordinance was approved by Chicago City Council in December of 2020. It allows for ADUs in attics, basements, and accessory buildings in 5 pilot zones across Chicago. So what's interesting to me is that ADUs used to be common in Chicago throughout the first half of the 20th century, but their construction was prohibited starting in 1957 due to changes in the zoning ordinances. Those ordinances added parking requirements and banned secondary residential structures on Chicago lots. The new ADU ordinance allows for the creation of new units for homeowners who need extra income or those wishing to create separate spaces for multi-generational families. It also provides a path to legalization for units that were previously built without zoning approval or the proper building permits.
Adam, thanks for that overview of Chicago's ordinance. I'm sure our viewers would love to take a look at some ADUs that already exist around the Chicago area. So I'd like to share a short video with some information about the new ordinance and lots of pictures of ADUs. I believe the photos are from Evanston, but they're great examples of what Chicagoans can do now that this ordinance has been passed.
Let's look at some local ADUs while we talk about the ordinance. Additional dwelling units, or ADUs, were once common in Chicago until their construction was prohibited in 1957. But in May 2021, homeowners in 5 pilot areas could start applying to the city to create 1 or more ADUs on their property because of the newly passed Additional Dwelling Units Ordinance. It allows ADUs in attics, basements, and accessory buildings in certain areas. This ordinance also provides a path for legalization of units that were previously built without zoning approval and building permits. You might call an ADU by one of its many other names, like accessory dwelling unit, coach house, backyard house, or in-law apartment. Whatever you call them, ADUs can have benefits for homeowners needing extra income or those who wish to create separate spaces for multi-generational families. ADUs can benefit Chicago's communities, too. The new ordinance aims to expand housing across Chicago and has incentives to create more affordable housing. There's even a lending program to help low and moderate income homeowners build ADUs. We hope this informs and inspires you to consider building an ADU. For more information, go to chicago.gov/ADU.
Those were some cute little homes. I love what some people have done with the space above their garage. After seeing these ADUs, do any of them look like places you'd like to live? Or would you consider having a family member live in one? I know I have. In fact, right now, we're creating a garage conversion ADU for my mother-in-law. Now, some of our viewers might be wondering why AARP is concerned about ADUs. It's not an issue a lot of people would think relates to older adults. So I'd like to share a word from Danielle Aragoni, Director of the AARP Livable Communities, to explain more about AARP's interest in livable communities.
AARP really believes that livable communities are all about helping people live their best lives at every age. And we know that people are best able to do that when they live in an environment that allows them to do that. That means that we have things like a range of transportation choices for people to get around for the day when they cannot or maybe choose not to drive anymore. It means that we have things like safe and walkable streets, safe, accessible parks, and myriad ways to be involved, whether it's through volunteerism or work or social engagement. And housing is so critical to all of those elements. Really, where you live kind of drives how you live. And so things like ensuring that we have a range of housing options lets people choose the best housing solution that works for them. That means that we're working to create more housing diversity in communities. It means we're working to support more multi-generational housing. And it also means that we're working to increase the supply of smaller housing units, like ADUs, on existing lots. These are all part of creating sort of a missing middle housing approach that offers more choice and more diversity for people to find the best match for them and help them live their best life.
Thanks, Danielle. Rosanna, do you have anything to add to Danielle's thoughts about livable communities?
I do. The AARP Community Survey in 2018 shows us that adults strongly prefer to live in their own neighborhood as they age. 77% of the respondents said they want to remain in their community for as long as possible, and 76% said they want to remain in their current residence as long as possible. Communities become a source of support and encouragement for residents, particularly for older adults who have an even stronger desire to age in place. The AARP survey finds many adults 50 and older are willing to consider alternatives such as home sharing, building an accessory dwelling unit, or moving into villages that provide services that enable aging in place. Surveys show that a majority of Americans of all ages prefer to live in walkable neighborhoods that offer a mix of housing, transportation options, and are close to jobs, schools, shopping, entertainment, and parks. These preferences, coupled with the rapid aging of the United States population overall and the decrease in households with children, will continue to boost the need for smaller homes in more compact neighborhoods. But in a lot of cities around the country, housing costs are pushing people out of their homes and away from neighborhoods where they had been previously rooted, often destroying generations-long relationships between a community and its people. To preserve existing livable cities and their vibrant and healthy social networks, communities are looking for innovative ways to create affordable housing choices and income stability, especially for older adults. ADUs can be one way to do that. An increasing number of towns, cities, and counties, just like Chicago, have been adapting their zoning or housing laws to make it easier for homeowners to build ADUs. And here's a bonus. Because ADUs make use of their existing infrastructure and housing stock, they're environmentally friendly.
Rosanna, you just mentioned that Chicago adapted zoning and housing laws that paved the way for homeowners to build ADUs in certain parts of the city. Chicago's Department of Housing was instrumental in developing the city's ADU ordinance. Let's watch a message from Commissioner Marisa Novara as she explains how the ADU ordinance fits into a comprehensive 5-year housing plan known as One Chicago.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to share in the excitement of bringing ADUs back to Chicago. Back in 2018, the Chicago City Council adopted our current 5-year housing plan. It's called One Chicago, with the goal of providing a more equitable neighborhood landscape by supporting more affordable housing in gentrifying neighborhoods, more incentives from new housing construction in underinvested neighborhoods, and more tools to help property owners combat displacement. One of the tools we laid out in that plan was to legalize additional dwelling units, or ADUs. We're so pleased that with the help of AARP and others, we were able to do so for a pilot program of neighborhoods. The additional dwelling unit ordinance is one of the tools we passed that will help homeowners generate income by bringing new rental units into neighborhoods, avoid displacement, and better prepare for financial challenges. ADUs will not only create a way for homeowners to increase their monthly income, but also create much needed rental units that will help provide safe places to live for others. I want to thank AARP for its partnership in helping to bring ADUs back to our city and its continued work to ensure that residents know that their homes are valuable and can grow as their needs change. Today, you'll be in great hands with Daniel Hertz, our Chief of Policy here at the Department of Housing, who will go over the new programming in detail with all of you. Thanks again.
And welcome, Daniel K. Hertz. Now, Commissioner Novara just described how the ADU ordinance fits into the One Chicago housing plan. Can you tell us how ADUs can help make Chicago more livable?
Absolutely. First, ADUs can be an important piece of the affordable housing puzzle. They're certainly not the only piece of the puzzle, but the ordinance has incentives to help increase affordable housing. So for example, for properties with 2 or more new ADUs built, every other ADU must be affordable for 30 years after construction. So that means properties with 2 or 3 new ADUs must have 1 affordable unit, properties with 4 or 5 conversion units must have 2 affordable units, and so on. And there's financial assistance available for low and moderate income homeowners to complete that ADU related work on their properties. So that's one way that ADUs can help make Chicago more livable.
So the affordable housing piece is important. Are there other ways ADUs help with the livability of Chicago?
There are so many ways that ADUs help with livability. They can also create separate spaces for multi-generational families to live near each other. I think a lot of Chicagoans find that appealing. An ADU can be a space for an older relative to live out their years surrounded by family in a familiar neighborhood, but still have their own space. Or the same ADU could be used by a young adult who's becoming independent but still needs a little financial support. Really, ADUs can help many different people in different situations stay in their communities.
I'm really glad you mentioned different people and different situations. Chicago is such a big, diverse city with really wonderful and distinct neighborhoods. Does this ordinance take all that difference into account?
Absolutely. The Chicago City Council understands that what works for one neighborhood might not work for another. So the ordinance has 5 different pilot zones that allow each community to tailor ADU regulations to meet their specific needs. For example, in the north and northwest zones, vacant lots can have coach houses constructed before a principal residence is built. And that's not allowed in the other zones. And in the west, south, and southeast zones, buildings must be owner occupied in order to add a coach house, and only 2 ADU permits can be issued per block per year. The north and northwest zones don't have those restrictions.
Different neighborhoods do seem to have different needs when it comes to ADUs. The west, south, and southeast zones seem to be taking things a little more slowly with ADU construction, while the north and northwest zones seem to be moving a little more quickly. Speaking of differences, I'd like to share a short video that has some different and interesting examples of ways to build ADUs.
ADUs can play an important role in serving Chicago's housing needs. In Chicago's ordinance, ADU stands for Additional Dwelling Units, but it can also mean Accessory Dwelling Units. Regardless of what the acronym stands for, ADUs are residential units built on the same lot as an existing home. These small auxiliary units were once commonplace as alley flats, guest houses, and basement or attic conversions. They are now allowed in certain zones within the city. ADUs can take many forms. They can be attached to an existing home or be a standalone structure. Let's explore some ways homeowners can build ADUs and how they can help older adults remain in their communities. An existing garage offers several possibilities. For example, one owner could convert their garage into a fully accessible apartment for themselves as their mobility changes, and rent out their original house to a family to generate income. Or another owner might keep their garage and build an apartment over it as a low or no-cost apartment for a caregiver or family member. A basement could also become an apartment. So could an attic. The homeowner might also build a small standalone structure on their lot for guests, or to rent out for additional income, or for a family caregiver if they ever need one. And later, could become their primary home when they want to downsize or live in a more accessible unit. Regardless of how and why they're built, ADUs can help ensure that Chicagoans of all ages, including older adults, have more options in where and how to live in their own communities.
I hope you all liked that video. I thought it was a nice overview of different ways to build ADUs. It also touched on some reasons why people are interested in adding ADUs. So let's turn to that topic. Adam, can you tell us more about the benefits of building ADUs?
I'd love to. So in the United States, average household sizes are getting smaller, but most houses that are built for larger families. And according to the 2015 American Community Survey by the Census Bureau, single people living alone is the most common household type in the nation. The next most common, couples with no children. The single-family homes that are built to accommodate families with children are just too big for many of today's households. Nationwide and here in Chicago, we're seeing a need for smaller homes in more compact neighborhoods. And that's where ADUs really come in. A family could build a fully accessible ADU that would allow their parents or grandparents to stay in their neighborhoods as they age, while children and grandchildren could live in the bigger original house. And by fully accessible, I mean things like zero-step entrances, wider doors, and other barrier-free features that help people with mobility impairments live safely and comfortably. An ADU with those kinds of accessibility features, also sometimes called universal design features, can help older people live somewhat independently for much longer and postpone or maybe even avoid moving into a nursing home or an assisted living facility. If building an ADU with those kinds of features just won't work out, there is still the option of building an ADU to provide an independent living space for a caretaker or family members to live in while caring for their older family members. This kind of multi-generational housing can be a great way to prevent the isolation of older adults. ADUs can give you an option of having friends and family live nearby and really build those generational bonds. Adult children living near their aging parents can help them, as their parents might need to reduce their driving, or grandparents can live closer to their grandchildren so they witness all their important milestones. And of course, maybe spoil those grandkids with a little extra attention, and even help with childcare. And of course, renting out an ADU can also bring some much needed extra income for families, especially in retirement. A supplemental rental income could be very helpful.
It makes sense that ADUs could help with multi-generational housing. It was a positive factor for our family when deciding to construct an ADU. In fact, I'd like to share a short video about how an ADU has helped one family in Oakland, California with multi-generational housing. Oakland's architecture is a bit different than Chicago's, but I think the backyard setup has some similarities to a typical backyard in Chicago. Let's check it out.
You know, I've been here for almost 19 years now. It's the longest place I've ever lived as an adult now. So it's home. And that's the great thing about this neighborhood. You know, I can walk 2 blocks down to International Boulevard, and a 12-minute walk I can get to BART, which is our heavy rail system here. So it's nice that I can access a lot of things without actually being in a car, which is what I really wanted in a neighborhood. One of the things I think will really benefit of having an ADU, from our perspective, it allows us to be able to have, our elder of our family, Iris, be able to stay with us and, reduce her costs. But even if she doesn't stay there, it allows us to then provide opportunity for, a younger person that wants to move into the community, that helps us to be able to have an additional income that allows us to stay here longer.
My mother's very social. She's very active, older, but not old. Young at heart for sure. So having a space where she can still live her life is important.
The more close-knit you have your family, it's usually the better off you are. You have those conversations that can't occur over the phone, that occur when you have it right here close together. But it's also this a sense of comfort knowing that they're close and that they need something. If we need something from Iris, or Iris needs something from us, we're right here for each other.
The option of having her close to us without necessarily being in our space is a wonderful solution for everybody.
But it also could be a play that allows us, as we age, and I do have some health issues that vary up and down, so my work schedule can change, how much time I can work, that provides us, additional income. So I have that flexibility of physical, but really of mental, being able to know that we're going to bring income in and be able to stay where we really like to be.
I hope you all enjoyed that video. Rosanna, I love how that family is making use of their backyard cottage as a space for an independent woman to stay connected to her family.
I agree. That was a good example of how an ADU can help with aging in place. Another big benefit of ADUs is that they offer more housing options for everyone, young and old alike. Some people call this missing middle housing. And by that, I mean, we're missing those smaller, less expensive places to live. Remember, households are smaller than they used to be, so we need smaller housing units that can accommodate those smaller households. Plus, ADUs are often more affordable because of that smaller size. They'll cost less to build, and occupants will have lower utility bills down the road. All that said, ADUs can offer more housing options to people at different life stages.
Those are some really good points. Let's see how an ADU has helped one family in Ashland, Oregon, create some flexible housing options. Oregon is a bit far from Chicago, but I think this ADU idea might inspire some Chicagoans.
Here in Ashland, Oregon, there are a lot of these ADUs that happen. The rental scene has kind of like it has for the rest of the country, been pushed to a difficulty because, people need space. We've got a university here, we've got a big theater here, we've got more people that want to move here. And I think it's part of the living culture is what separate space do you have? How do you use it? It offers people a way to add to what they already have. And I think that just gives you more opportunity, more reason to stay here because you've got some possibilities. And I think also as you get older, things change. So we just moved out of the garage like moments ago, actually. They just last week started to do some of the demolition work. And everybody's got a different story. Our hope is that maybe at least for the first year, we can just have friends and family in and out of there, and then maybe rent it out. But our one and only kid is away at college and she's a freshman.
You'll be able to see it all. Yeah, do you want to see it? Okay, and this is Tom. He's taking stuff away too. All right, girl. Here we go.
Have no idea what's going to happen in the world, and have no idea, if my kid is going to need a space to come back to. And we have a small house, and we have one bathroom, and we've been able to live with that. But to give her a second space, possibly to land, in between things, or, just if she needs help. I think it also keeps us in the world a little bit because, I've thought, well, maybe there's a foreign exchange student, that might want to live there. Or maybe there's, I just feel like the possibilities have grown about what that space could be for us and for other people.
What a nice example of how an ADU can be a great living space for family and friends. We've touched on ADUs and affordable housing, but I'd like to ask Daniel a little more about that. How does Chicago's ADU ordinance promote affordable housing?
The new ADU ordinance mandates that some of these new ADUs must be affordable. For example, for every property with 2 or more new ADUs built, every other ADU must be affordable for lower income households. Additionally, there's a program where interested property owners can partner with the Low Income Housing Trust Fund to receive subsidies to support ADUs for tenants whose income is 30% or less of the area average income.
Daniel, that's really good to know that those incentives exist in the ordinance. Can you go over more of the details in the ordinance?
Sure. Here are the basic details. No additional parking is required for newly created ADUs. So you don't need to add a parking space if you build a new ADU. It's great if you want to, but you don't have to. But you can't remove existing on-site parking to make room for an ADU. You can ask for administrative adjustments or other kinds of zoning relief to do that, but it's not a guarantee you'll be able to do it. Also, Chicago says that you can't use these new ADUs for short-term leases or vacation rentals, such as Airbnb. The focus of the ADU ordinance is really on giving Chicago residents more housing options. And there are some size limitations too. Coach houses can't cover more than 60% of a property's required rear setback. Rear setback usually refers to a backyard. And those coach houses can't have more than 700 square feet of living space, and again, can't take up more than 60% of your backyard. Chicago still needs its backyards. And there's some more technical details, like no elements of a coach house can exceed 22 feet in overall height above grade, and ADUs are exempt from minimum lot area per unit rules. Simply put, that means coach houses can't be too tall, and they've got different rules for how big their lots need to be in comparison to their house size.
Thank you, Daniel. So we briefly touched on the fact that there are 5 different zones in the ordinance. But what about people who don't live in one of those zones? Are they left out of the ADU trend?
For now, yes, people who don't live in one of the 5 zones are a little left out. But these 5 zones are just for a trial period of time. If you live outside of a trial zone and you see the benefits of ADUs, you can use your voice, reach out to your local alderperson and express your approval of the benefits of having ADUs in your neighborhood. And if you want to build one, make sure that your alderperson knows that your ward should be next in line for ADU expansion.
I think that's great advice, but a lot of people might not feel comfortable reaching out to an elected official or even making a big change to their house or to their neighborhood. I'd like to share some more thoughts about this from AARP's Danielle Aragoni and Shannon Guzman, Senior Strategic Policy Advisor at the AARP Public Policy Institute.
Don't be afraid to envision your home functioning in a different way. We know that, 3/4 of people over the age of 50 want to be able to age in their home and their communities. And yet they don't have the right kind of options available to them to do just that. So think differently about your space, about what your neighborhood might look like if ADUs were a part of that. And, imagine how that might benefit you and your neighbors.
Think about your future needs. So when considering housing for you and your family, you want to find the right fit. It should accommodate your needs now and into the future. This means thinking about whether you have the space for a family caregiver to live nearby or need accessible features to better navigate your home should your mobility change. So ADUs can work well as an option for you to age in your home and community.
A huge thank you again to Danielle and Shannon for sharing their thoughts. Adam, I hear AARP has some good resources about ADUs. Can you tell us about them?
Yes, that's right, Janae. AARP has several publications that you can use to get to know ADUs even better. We have the ABCs of ADUs, which is a 20-page introductory and best practices guide for how towns, cities, counties, and states can include ADUs in their mix of housing options. And there's accessory dwelling units, a step-by-step guide to design and development, which is a design catalog that contains information about financing and budgeting for an ADU project, as well as visuals that show how ADUs can be easily designed to serve people of differing ages and abilities. The AARP website is a great way to keep informed about housing issues, including ADUs. AARP.org/ADU is dedicated to ADUs, and AARP.org/livable, that's LIVABLE, is where you can learn what a livable community is and how and why AARP is working with local leaders nationwide to make communities more livable for people of all ages.
Thank you so much, Adam. And Daniel, what ADU resources does Chicago have available?
The official webpage for information on the new ADU ordinance is chicago.gov/ADU. There's one link on that page in particular that I think you should be sure to check out: Grants for Homeowners. It has information about the grant program that helps income qualifying homeowners design and build ADUs.
Yeah, that's right, Daniel. The city's official website is a great place to start. Also, Chicago Cityscape has a very helpful ADU portal for people looking to get more information on building an ADU at chicagocityscape.com/ADU.
Wonderful. So with that said, I'd like to ask each of our guests today for their final thoughts about Chicago's ADU ordinance. Daniel, let's start with you.
Thanks. I think that the Chicago's new ADU ordinance is an excellent opportunity for people to more flexibly stay in their communities, no matter their life situation. I strongly encourage people to check it out.
Excellent. Rosanna, what's your message to our viewers?
Yes, well, first of all, thanks for watching this webinar and for your interest in ADUs. ADUs are a marvelous, affordable tool available to those who want to be able to stay in their current homes, but who need some help doing so. There can be a number of reasons for doing so. The need to make room for an aging parent or adult children and their families, the need to have a live-in caregiver, or the need for additional income in order to meet expenses, all while preserving a sense of independent living for all those involved. As you've seen today, there are a number of resources available to you to help you walk through the process to make ADUs a reality for you. Thanks, Janae.
Thank you, Rosanna. And Adam?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Rosanna just said, and I would only add that ADUs are an important tool in the toolbox of solving some of the housing affordability issues that we know about in our city and nationwide, and also to really address the severe shortage of accessible housing options. Again, not all ADUs are accessible or will be accessible, but it is another way to create new accessible housing at a time where folks with mobility impairments have a really, regardless of age, have a really hard time finding housing.
Yes, that's a very good point. And now, as we wrap up our presentation, I'd like to offer a huge thank you to all of our guests. We really appreciate your time and expertise about Chicago's ADU ordinance and the benefits ADUs have for people of all ages. And if we've piqued your interest in ADUs, remember, AARP Livable Communities and the City of Chicago have many resources available to help you. We also welcome your feedback on our session and appreciate you taking a few moments to complete the survey after this webinar. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.